chandeliers, and the polished floors that reflected every ray of light. The air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and rich food, and the chatter of the crowd filled every corner of the room. In the midst of all this luxury, the millionaire walked with a confident air, greeting his guests with a wide smile that barely reached his eyes. He enjoyed these events not just for the attention but for the power it gave him, the sense of being the center of the world. Near the corner of the hall, a man who worked as the caretaker quietly moved among the guests. He was dressed in a simple uniform, his shoes polished but unremarkable. He carried himself with a careful humility, never drawing attention, always staying just out of sight. Though he had worked in this mansion for years, today he felt an unusual mix of excitement and anxiety. Something about tonight made him want to step out of the shadows, even if just a little. He paused near the grand piano, his fingers brushing the polished keys, feeling a familiar thrill in his chest. He had not played seriously in years, but the piano always called to him, as if it remembered every touch and every note he had ever played. The millionaire noticed him immediately. He had seen the caretaker around many times, always quiet, always dutiful, never daring to speak to anyone except when necessary. Tonight, for reasons he did not fully understand, the millionaire decided to make the caretaker the center of attention, if only for a laugh. He walked over, his expensive shoes clicking against the marble floor, and stopped beside him. The guests nearby noticed the sudden movement and turned their heads, curious about what the millionaire might do next. "If you can play that piano," the millionaire said, his voice loud enough to carry across the room, "I'll wed you." His words were sharp, mocking, intended to amuse the crowd. A ripple of laughter spread among the guests. Some chuckled politely, others openly mocked the idea. The caretaker froze, his fingers hovering just above the keys. He felt the sting of humiliation but also a spark of determination. The room seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his reaction. He looked up at the millionaire, meeting his gaze steadily, even though his heart raced. He did not speak, but the silence itself was a kind of response. The millionaire smirked, clearly enjoying the attention, and the guests laughed even harder, certain that the caretaker would shrink back, embarrassed and silent. But the caretaker did not move away. He took a deep breath and let his fingers fall onto the keys. The first note rang out, soft but confident. It was not perfect, not yet, but it held a promise, a quiet defiance that made the room fall silent. Guests who had been laughing moments before now watched in curiosity. The millionaire's smirk faltered slightly as the music began to grow, note by note, into something more. The caretaker had not played publicly in years, but the memory of the music was alive in him, guiding every movement, every chord. The first few notes were simple, almost hesitant, but they carried a depth that surprised everyone. The caretaker's fingers moved more freely as he continued, his confidence growing with each measure. The music filled the hall, weaving through the laughter and chatter, capturing the attention of everyone present. The guests leaned in, their eyes widening as the melody grew more complex, more beautiful. The millionaire, who had expected embarrassment, found himself speechless. He had intended to mock, to amuse himself and his guests, but instead, he was faced with a display of unexpected talent that he could not ignore. The caretaker played with a passion that spoke of years of practice, of quiet dedication, and of a love for music that had never faded. His hands moved across the keys with precision and feeling, creating a harmony that resonated through the room. The guests were mesmerized, unable to look away. Even those who had come expecting amusement now found themselves caught in the spell of the music. It was not just skill that held their attention, but the emotion behind every note. The caretaker's life, his struggles, his dreams, all seemed to flow through the piano, telling a story that words could not capture. The millionaire watched, stunned, as the caretaker played. His confidence had been built on wealth, on the assumption that he could control the room and the people in it. But here was someone who could command attention without any status, without any show of wealth or power. The music itself was enough. The guests, too, began to see the caretaker in a new light. He was no longer invisible, no longer just a quiet man who maintained the mansion. He was someone with talent, with courage, with a voice that could not be ignored. As the final notes lingered in the air, the room remained silent for a moment, as if no one wanted to break the spell. Then, slowly, a ripple of applause began, growing louder and louder until the hall was filled with clapping. Some guests wiped tears from their eyes, moved by the beauty of the performance. The caretaker stood, a modest smile on his face, acknowledging the applause without arrogance. He had played not for recognition, but because he could not help it, because the music demanded to be heard. The millionaire cleared his throat, finally finding his voice. His smirk was gone, replaced by a look of shock and a hint of respect. He had expected to humiliate, to amuse, and perhaps to assert his superiority, but instead, he had witnessed a moment of true genius. The caretaker had proven something far more valuable than a simple challenge. He had shown that talent, dedication, and courage could command respect in any setting. The guests continued to murmur and clap, some approaching the caretaker to offer words of admiration. For the first time, he felt seen, truly seen, not for his position or his duties, but for who he was and what he could do. The millionaire, still recovering from the surprise, could only nod, a silent acknowledgement that he had underestimated someone he had dismissed for so long. After the applause faded, the caretaker returned to his duties, quietly, without fanfare. But something had changed. The way the guests looked at him, the way they spoke to him, even the way the millionaire regarded him carried a new weight. He was no longer just a caretaker. He was someone whose talent could not be ignored, whose presence demanded recognition. As the evening continued, the caretaker found a quiet corner to rest. He reflected on the events, the challenge, the music, and the unexpected outcome. The fear and anxiety he had felt were replaced by a sense of accomplishment and a newfound confidence. He realized that this night, this moment, was not just about proving something to the millionaire or the guests, but about proving something to himself. He had faced a challenge, stepped into the light, and shown the world a part of himself that had long been hidden. And so, the night passed, filled with music, admiration, and whispers of the caretaker's talent. The mansion, with all its luxury and wealth, had been transformed for a brief moment by something far more powerful. The courage and genius of a man who had dared to play, to show, and to rise above the expectations of those around him. The caretaker had not only met the challenge. He had changed the way everyone in the room saw him and perhaps, in some small way, the way they saw the world. After the evening had ended and the guests had left the mansion, the caretaker found himself alone in the grand hall. The echo of the piano still lingered in the air, a soft reminder of the courage he had shown. He walked over to the instrument, running his fingers gently across the keys, feeling the smooth surface beneath his touch. The memory of the notes he had played filled him with a mixture of pride and nervous anticipation. He knew he could do better, and he felt a quiet determination to prove it, not for anyone else, but for himself. In the days that followed, the caretaker made time for practice whenever the mansion was quiet. Early mornings and late nights became his secret hours of dedication. He had once studied music briefly as a child, learning to read notes and understand rhythm, but life had taken him in other directions. Now, the piano seemed to call to him, and he answered with patience and persistence. He began with simple scales, running his fingers over the keys, listening to the sound, making small adjustments with each attempt. Gradually, he moved to more complicated pieces, ones that challenged his memory and skill. Each day, he discovered new strength in his hands, new confidence in his abilities. Sometimes his fingers stumbled, sometimes he missed a note, and at those moments, frustration threatened to take hold. But he reminded himself that every great musician had faced failure and that persistence was the path to mastery. He learned to listen carefully, to feel the music in a way that went beyond the notes, understanding that expression mattered as much as accuracy. The caretaker also began studying music from other sources. Old books on musical theory, scores left forgotten in the mansion's library, and even recordings he had found on a small music player became his teachers. He absorbed everything he could, letting the sounds of past masters guide his own performance. Slowly, he began to understand not just how to play, but how to tell a story through music. Every chord, every pause, every crescendo became a word in the tale he wanted to tell. Outside, life went on as usual. The millionaire continued his social events, hosting parties, and showing off his wealth. The guests would often mention the caretaker from that one unforgettable evening, some in admiration, others in surprise that someone so quiet could possess such talent. Yet, the caretaker remained humble, never seeking praise, never flaunting his skill. For him, the piano was not a way to impress the world but a way to connect with a part of himself that had been silent for too long. He found moments of inspiration in the most ordinary experiences. A breeze blowing through the mansion's gardens, the sound of rain against the windows, the laughter of children in the distance. All became elements he could weave into his music. He discovered that expression came not only from technical skill but from the depth of emotion he could bring to each note. His practice sessions became more than repetition. They became a dialogue with his own feelings, a way to explore and understand the world around him. There were days when exhaustion made it hard to continue. Caring for the mansion was demanding work, and he often found himself physically tired, his hands sore from chores and practice alike. But the desire to improve, to meet the challenge the millionaire had presented, kept him moving forward. He reminded himself that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, patience, and courage were equally necessary. And so, each night, he returned to the piano, letting the music guide him, letting the quiet moments teach him the lessons he needed. During one particular evening, he discovered a piece that spoke to him in a way nothing else had. It was complex, filled with challenging sequences and emotional depth. He spent hours attempting it, sometimes failing repeatedly, sometimes feeling a breakthrough when a sequence finally flowed perfectly. Each mistake taught him something. Each small victory strengthened his resolve. He realized that music was not just notes on a page but a reflection of the soul, and the deeper he connected with it, the more alive he felt. The caretaker also began imagining the reactions of the millionaire and the guests. He visualized playing before them again, seeing their expressions change from doubt to admiration. These mental rehearsals became part of his preparation, allowing him to anticipate pressure and perform with calmness. He reminded himself that confidence came not from arrogance but from knowing he had worked hard and was ready. Every note he played in private added to the confidence that would one day carry him through the performance he had yet to face. As the days passed, the caretaker noticed changes in himself beyond the piano. He walked taller, spoke more freely, and approached his work with renewed energy. His dedication to music had opened a door to self-respect, and it reflected in every interaction. Those around him began to notice a subtle shift, though no one could quite describe what had changed. Even the millionaire, when passing by, observed a quiet strength in the caretaker that had not been there before, though he did not understand its origin. The caretaker also began experimenting with improvisation, allowing his emotions to guide his fingers instead of strictly following the sheet music. He discovered that his feelings could shape the music in unique ways, adding a personal touch that made each performance distinct. This exploration gave him a deeper sense of connection to the piano, a feeling that went beyond skill and technique. Music had become a friend, a confidant, and a means of expressing what words could not convey. Every practice session ended with reflection. He would sit silently at the piano, listening to the fading notes, feeling the vibrations in the wood, and thinking about the journey he had begun. He understood that this was more than preparation for a single performance. It was a journey of self-discovery, of understanding what he was capable of, and of embracing a part of himself that had long been hidden. The piano had become a mirror, showing him both his strengths and his vulnerabilities, and he accepted both with humility. Neighbors and occasional visitors to the mansion began to speak in hushed tones about the caretaker. They had heard the story of the millionaire's challenge and the brief performance, and curiosity grew about whether he would truly rise to the occasion. Rumors spread, some exaggerating his skill, others doubting it. But the caretaker paid little attention. He knew that the only opinion that truly mattered was his own, and he continued to practice with unwavering focus, letting his talent grow naturally without seeking validation. One evening, as the sun set and the mansion was bathed in golden light, the caretaker paused after a long practice session. His hands ached slightly, but his mind was calm. He could feel the progress he had made, the improvements in technique and expression. He realized that the journey was far from over, that there was still much to learn, but he also understood that he had already achieved something remarkable. He had taken a step into the light, faced a challenge, and refused to be limited by expectations or circumstances. The caretaker knew that when the next event came, when the millionaire again made his joke or challenge, he would be ready. He would play not just to impress, but to communicate something deeper, to show that talent, determination, and courage could transcend social barriers. He had discovered a strength within himself that could not be taken away, a quiet confidence that came from knowing his own worth and abilities. The piano had become both a tool and a companion, helping him transform fear into skill, doubt into determination, and silence into music. As the caretaker closed the piano for the night and turned away, he felt a sense of anticipation and excitement. He knew that the path ahead would not be easy, that there would be obstacles, pressure, and perhaps skepticism from others. But he also knew that he had prepared, that he had worked tirelessly, and that he had found a way to express the part of himself that had long been hidden. For the first time in years, he felt fully alive, ready to face whatever came next, and ready to show the world the genius that had always been within him. The evening of the next grand event at the mansion arrived, filled with the usual glitter, music, and chatter. Guests wore their finest clothes, their laughter echoing through the halls, and waiters moved swiftly carrying trays of sparkling drinks and delicate hors d'oeuvres. The millionaire was in his element, greeting every guest with charm and a practiced smile, clearly enjoying the attention and the sense of control that his wealth brought him. He moved confidently through the crowd, aware that everyone looked to him for entertainment and spectacle. The caretaker, meanwhile, stayed in the background, quietly performing his usual duties, while feeling a growing mix of anticipation and nerves. He knew that tonight would be different. The challenge had been set, and the opportunity to prove himself again was coming. His days and nights of practice had prepared him, but the pressure of performing in front of the millionaire and the distinguished guests was not easy to shake. Still, he felt a quiet determination and a calm readiness that only hours of dedication and self-belief could bring. As the evening progressed, the piano became the center of attention. Guests were drawn to it, some curious, others skeptical, and the millionaire could not resist making his famous remark. He leaned back slightly, a smug grin on his face, and loudly repeated the challenge from before. "If you can play that piano, I'll wed you." The room filled with laughter once again, but this time it carried a hint of expectation. The caretaker, standing nearby, felt the familiar pang of nerves but also a strong sense of purpose. He nodded to himself and stepped toward the piano. Taking his seat at the instrument, he allowed his fingers to rest lightly on the keys. The room seemed to quiet in anticipation, the chatter fading as guests waited to see if he would succeed or falter. He took a deep breath, recalling the hours of practice, the quiet nights spent perfecting each note, and the lessons he had learned about music, patience, and emotion. He knew that this was more than a performance. It was an opportunity to show the truth of his abilities and the dedication he had cultivated in private. The first notes emerged softly, a gentle melody that captured the attention of the room. The caretaker's hands moved with confidence and grace, each chord carefully considered, each movement reflecting both skill and emotion. Guests who had come expecting amusement were now watching in fascination. The music was not just technically impressive but alive with feeling, telling a story that reached beyond words. The caretaker played as though he was speaking from the heart, sharing a piece of himself with every note. The millionaire's smirk slowly faded as he realized that this was no ordinary performance. He had intended to mock, but instead, he was faced with undeniable talent and artistry. The guests were captivated, leaning forward in their seats, unable to look away. Some whispered to one another, astonished by the depth of the music. The caretaker's playing grew more confident with each passing moment, moving from gentle, flowing melodies to powerful, expressive sequences that filled the grand hall with resonance and emotion. The caretaker's mind was calm, focused entirely on the music. He did not think of the audience or the millionaire's challenge. He thought only of the story he wanted to tell, of the feelings he wished to convey, of the journey that had brought him to this moment. Each note seemed to flow naturally from his fingers, guided by memory, emotion, and intuition. The music rose and fell, shifting from tender passages to bold crescendos, capturing the attention and admiration of everyone present. As the performance continued, the atmosphere in the room transformed. The laughter and chatter that had filled the space earlier were replaced by silence, awe, and reflection. Guests who had doubted or dismissed the caretaker's abilities now found themselves fully absorbed in his music. Even the millionaire, who had hoped to maintain control and amusement, felt a sense of humility and admiration. He had underestimated someone who had quietly worked to nurture a talent that had long been hidden from the world. The caretaker moved seamlessly between different styles, his fingers dancing over the keys with precision and emotion. He played complex passages that required concentration and skill, all while maintaining a fluidity and expressiveness that made the music seem effortless. The guests were mesmerized by the combination of technical mastery and heartfelt expression. Each note seemed to convey a message, a reflection of the caretaker's inner world, his perseverance, and the quiet determination that had driven him to prepare for this moment. The performance reached its climax with a powerful sequence that echoed through the grand hall, leaving a profound impression on everyone present. The caretaker's hands moved with a blend of strength and delicacy, commanding the instrument while expressing vulnerability and depth. The music seemed to linger in the air long after the last note was played, creating a moment of silence filled with admiration, reflection, and astonishment. Slowly, the silence gave way to applause. At first, it was quiet and hesitant, but it grew steadily as more and more guests recognized the remarkable talent and dedication displayed. The sound of clapping, cheers, and even tears of appreciation filled the room. The caretaker remained seated, modestly acknowledging the audience's reaction without pride or arrogance. He had played not to impress or compete, but to share something deeply personal and meaningful. The millionaire, still recovering from the surprise, approached the piano cautiously. His expression was a mix of disbelief and respect. He had intended to mock, to assert his superiority, but instead he found himself facing a truth he could not deny. The caretaker's performance had demonstrated not only talent but also courage, persistence, and the power of quiet determination. It was a lesson in humility that the millionaire could not ignore. Guests continued to approach the caretaker, offering congratulations and praise. They spoke of the beauty of the music, the emotion it conveyed, and the remarkable skill required to achieve such mastery. The caretaker accepted their words with gratitude, yet remained humble, knowing that his journey was far from over. He understood that talent alone was not enough. Continuous practice, dedication, and growth would be necessary to maintain and improve his abilities. After the event, as the guests departed and the mansion quieted once more, the caretaker reflected on the evening. He felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had met the challenge and shared his gift with others. At the same time, he recognized that this was only the beginning of a greater journey. The confidence, experience, and lessons gained from this performance would guide him in future endeavors, both in music and in life. The piano remained silent for now, but it seemed to hum with the energy of the evening's performance. The caretaker approached it once again, running his fingers over the keys, feeling the vibrations and the memory of the music he had created. He knew that the instrument was not just an object, but a companion and a teacher. Through it, he had expressed emotions, told stories, and connected with others in a profound and meaningful way. The caretaker also realized the impact of the evening on those around him. The guests and even the millionaire had witnessed something extraordinary, a reminder that talent, dedication, and courage could emerge from the most unexpected places. He had challenged assumptions, broken stereotypes, and shown that respect and admiration could be earned through skill and determination rather than wealth or status. As he left the hall that night, the caretaker felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that challenges would continue to arise, that he would face pressure, doubt, and obstacles in the future. But he also knew that he had the ability to overcome them, that his passion and dedication were powerful tools that could guide him forward. The music had become a symbol of resilience, hope, and self-expression, and he carried that symbol with him as he returned to his duties in the quiet of the mansion. The night ended with a sense of calm and achievement. The caretaker had risen to the occasion, transforming a moment of potential ridicule into a triumph of talent, courage, and determination. He had not only met the challenge but had surpassed it, leaving a lasting impression on everyone present. The experience would stay with him, shaping his future and inspiring him to continue exploring, growing, and sharing his gift with the world. Through the piano, he had found a voice that could not be ignored, a presence that commanded attention, and a path that would lead him to new and greater heights. The applause had barely settled when whispers started circulating among the guests. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others leaned closer to one another to share quiet comments. No one had expected such skill from someone who had always been in the background. The caretaker, standing near the piano, felt a mixture of relief and quiet pride. He had done more than play the piano. He had opened a window into a world that most had never imagined existed within him. His performance had been a revelation, not just for the millionaire, but for everyone who had witnessed it. The millionaire himself stood slightly apart, his arms crossed, eyes focused on the caretaker. He had been confident, even cocky, expecting to amuse the guests at the expense of the man who had served him for years. Instead, he had been confronted with undeniable talent and courage. A part of him wanted to dismiss it as luck or exaggeration, but deep down he knew it was not. He had witnessed skill, emotion, and a kind of bravery that could not be faked or bought. Guests began approaching the caretaker, some shyly, others with obvious admiration. They spoke in hushed tones, careful not to disturb the elegance of the evening, yet eager to express their appreciation. One woman complimented the depth of feeling in the music, saying it had touched her in a way she could not describe. Another guest marveled at the complexity of the performance, amazed that someone could master such a challenging piece without formal recognition. The caretaker accepted each compliment with a humble nod, his heart quietly swelling with a mix of pride and humility. Among the crowd, a few people whispered to one another about the unexpected power of talent. They spoke of the caretaker's quiet demeanor, his years of unnoticed work, and how he had transformed what could have been a humiliating moment into an unforgettable triumph. It became clear that the performance had shifted perceptions, changing the way everyone saw him. He was no longer invisible. He had become a figure of respect and admiration, someone whose dedication and skill could not be ignored. The millionaire, watching all of this, felt an unfamiliar sensation. He realized that he had underestimated the caretaker, assuming that social status and wealth determined worth. But the music had proven otherwise. The performance was not about social class or wealth. It was about talent, determination, and the courage to express oneself despite doubt and expectation. Slowly, a look of respect replaced his smirk, though he struggled to show it openly. He had been challenged in a way he had not anticipated, and the lesson was both humbling and enlightening. The caretaker, aware of the changing atmosphere, remained composed. He had expected mixed reactions, perhaps even some ridicule, but the overwhelming admiration took him by surprise. It was a reminder that skill and passion could overcome prejudice, that dedication could turn skepticism into respect. He realized that this moment was bigger than the music itself. It was a demonstration of what could happen when one dared to step beyond expectation and embrace one's abilities fully. As the evening continued, guests approached with increasing warmth. Some asked questions about the caretaker's training, curious to learn how someone could achieve such mastery without formal recognition. Others complimented the way he had expressed emotion through the piano, acknowledging that it was rare to witness such authenticity in performance. The caretaker answered politely, sharing small insights into his practice and experiences, careful to remain humble while still conveying the effort behind his achievement. The millionaire, observing the growing admiration, decided to approach the caretaker. His steps were deliberate, and the guests parted to allow him through. He stopped before the piano, his expression carefully neutral, though the weight of realization was evident. For a moment, neither spoke. The caretaker met his gaze steadily, unafraid and composed, understanding that this interaction carried more significance than any words could capture. Finally, the millionaire spoke, his voice calm but deliberate. He acknowledged the talent and dedication he had witnessed, admitting that he had been wrong to mock or underestimate the caretaker. There was no need for excessive praise or flattery. The acknowledgement itself carried weight. It was a recognition that talent and courage mattered more than wealth or status, a lesson that the millionaire would carry with him beyond this evening. Other guests, noticing the exchange, began to speak of the lesson behind the performance. They discussed how appearances could be deceiving, how quiet diligence could produce extraordinary results, and how courage to rise above expectation was a form of strength in itself. Conversations shifted from casual gossip to reflections on talent, perseverance, and human potential. The caretaker's performance had ignited more than admiration for music. It had inspired contemplation and respect for what individuals could achieve when given the opportunity. Meanwhile, the caretaker felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. He knew that the impact of the evening would extend beyond applause or recognition. The experience had reinforced his belief in his own abilities and the value of perseverance. It had also shown him that even in situations where one is underestimated or overlooked, true talent and dedication could emerge and leave a lasting impression. This realization brought a sense of fulfillment that went far beyond temporary admiration. Guests continued to circulate, some revisiting the piano to watch the caretaker's hands move over the keys, others lingering to speak with him about the music. The atmosphere was filled with respect, curiosity, and a genuine appreciation for the effort and emotion that had gone into the performance. It became clear that this evening would be remembered not only for its elegance and grandeur, but also for the demonstration of hidden talent and quiet courage that had captured everyone's attention. The caretaker, though surrounded by admiration, remained grounded. He knew that the recognition was not the goal. The true value lay in the act of performing, in expressing what he had learned and felt. The audience's response was gratifying, but it was the journey, the preparation, the practice, the dedication that mattered most. He had discovered the power of his own potential, and that knowledge would continue to guide him in future endeavors. As the evening wound down, the guests slowly departed, carrying with them the memory of a performance that had exceeded all expectations. Conversations continued in hushed tones, recounting the extraordinary skill, the emotional depth, and the unexpected courage of the caretaker. Even the millionaire, though composed, reflected on the lesson of humility and respect that had been delivered through music. He had witnessed firsthand the transformative power of talent and determination, and it left a lasting impression on his perspective. The caretaker, finally alone in the quiet mansion, returned to the piano. He ran his fingers gently over the keys, not to perform for anyone, but to feel the connection once again, to honor the instrument that had become both teacher and companion. He reflected on the reactions, the respect gained, and the lessons learned, understanding that tonight had been a turning point. He had proven more than his ability to play. He had shown that courage, dedication, and authenticity could transform perception and inspire admiration. The night ended with a sense of calm and accomplishment. The caretaker had faced the challenge, risen to the occasion, and left a mark on everyone present. The experience reinforced the idea that talent and perseverance could overcome doubt and skepticism, that recognition often follows those who are patient and committed, and that true respect is earned through skill, courage, and authenticity. The performance had been more than music. It had been a revelation, a reminder that even the quietest individuals could possess extraordinary power and leave a lasting impact on those around them. As he closed the piano and walked away, the caretaker felt a sense of anticipation for what was yet to come. The recognition of talent was important, but the journey continued. There would be more opportunities to grow, more moments to share his abilities, and more lessons to learn. He had faced challenge and judgment, emerged with grace and skill, and now carried with him the confidence and determination to continue evolving, both as a musician and as a person. The evening had changed him and those around him, creating a ripple of respect, admiration, and inspiration that would not soon fade. In the weeks after the memorable performance, the caretaker's life began to shift in ways he had not expected. Guests and visitors spoke of him with admiration, recounting the story of the night when his music had captured everyone's attention. Some asked for lessons, others wanted to hear him play again, and a few even suggested opportunities outside the mansion. Though the caretaker remained humble, he felt a quiet confidence growing inside him. The recognition he had received was not the ultimate goal, but it served as a gentle reminder of the power of dedication, perseverance, and talent. The millionaire, too, had been affected by the events. He often reflected on the evening, realizing that his arrogance had blinded him to the potential of those around him. He began to treat the caretaker with a newfound respect, no longer seeing him merely as an employee but as someone whose abilities demanded acknowledgement. The dynamic in the mansion subtly changed. The caretaker's opinions were sought more often, his suggestions considered, and his presence valued. Even simple gestures, like a nod of approval from the millionaire, carried weight and reinforced the caretaker's sense of self-worth. Despite the growing recognition, the caretaker remained grounded. He continued to practice the piano diligently, exploring new compositions and refining his technique. Each session was a reminder that talent required constant nurturing, that mastery was not achieved overnight. He experimented with new styles, challenged himself with complex pieces, and allowed his emotions to guide his improvisation. Music had become not just a skill but a companion, a way to express the depths of his thoughts and feelings. In quiet moments, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. The early hours of practice, the solitude, the doubts and fears he had faced, all of it had led to this point. The experience had taught him that perseverance and courage often mattered more than innate skill alone. It was the willingness to rise above expectation, to face challenges head-on, that truly defined success. The piano had become a symbol of that journey, a reminder that dedication and self-belief could transform both perception and reality. The caretaker's influence began to extend beyond music. Guests and staff alike noticed his calm confidence, his steady approach to challenges, and his quiet wisdom. People started to seek his advice, not only about music but about life and perseverance. He shared his experiences modestly, emphasizing the importance of practice, patience, and the courage to pursue one's passions, even in the face of skepticism. His words resonated with those who had once overlooked him, showing that humility and skill could coexist with influence and respect. The mansion became a hub for creativity and appreciation. The caretaker organized small gatherings, inviting musicians, artists, and friends to share their talents. These evenings were intimate, filled with music, conversation, and a sense of camaraderie that had previously been absent. The caretaker encouraged others to explore their abilities, offering guidance and support while remaining humble about his own achievements. In doing so, he created an environment where talent was celebrated, not judged by status or wealth, but by effort and expression. The millionaire, observing these gatherings, found himself learning from the caretaker once again. He saw the genuine joy that came from creating and sharing, the satisfaction of helping others develop their skills, and the value of humility in leadership. Though his wealth remained, his perspective had changed. He had learned that true influence and respect were earned through encouragement, acknowledgement, and the recognition of talent in unexpected places. The caretaker had become both a teacher and an example, showing the power of quiet strength and consistent effort. Opportunities began to open for the caretaker beyond the mansion. Invitations arrived from local music schools, community events, and private gatherings. Each offer was carefully considered, balancing the responsibilities of his work with the desire to share his music more broadly. He approached each opportunity with the same dedication he had shown from the beginning, understanding that success was not just about recognition but about continued growth, connection, and expression. Through it all, the caretaker remained humble. He never sought fame or wealth. His joy came from the act of playing, the connection with others through music, and the personal fulfillment of expressing what words could not capture. The applause and admiration were appreciated, but they were secondary to the sense of purpose and satisfaction he felt when his fingers danced across the keys. Music had become a way of life, a bridge to understanding, and a means to inspire and uplift others. The story of the caretaker and the millionaire became a tale often recounted by those who attended the memorable performance. It was a story of unexpected talent, courage, and perseverance, a reminder that appearances could be deceiving and that true skill often resides where it is least expected. Children and adults alike were inspired, learning that dedication and practice could turn quiet determination into extraordinary achievement. The caretaker's journey became a beacon for those who faced doubt or underestimation, showing that belief in oneself was a powerful force. As time went on, the caretaker's confidence and skill continued to grow. Each performance, whether in the mansion or elsewhere, was an opportunity to explore new expressions, to connect with audiences, and to refine his abilities. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a companion, a teacher, and a platform through which he could communicate the deepest parts of himself. Music remained a source of joy, challenge, and inspiration, guiding him through life with purpose and fulfillment. The millionaire, having witnessed this transformation, often reflected on the lesson he had learned. He had been reminded that wealth and status could not replace skill, dedication, or courage. He had seen firsthand how respect was earned, how admiration could be inspired by authenticity, and how true talent could emerge from the most unassuming places. The caretaker's presence and music had changed not only the mansion but also the perspective of those who had once underestimated him. In the quiet moments of reflection, the caretaker would sit at the piano, feeling the familiar touch of the keys and the resonance of the music beneath his fingers. He thought of the journey, from the first hesitant notes to the performance that had captured everyone's attention. He felt gratitude for the opportunity, for the lessons learned, and for the ability to continue exploring his passion. The music was a testament to perseverance, courage, and the quiet power of dedication. The caretaker's life had been transformed, not by wealth, but by recognition of his abilities and the chance to pursue his passion fully. He had risen above expectation, challenged assumptions, and shown that true talent and determination could create lasting impact. His story became a reminder that anyone, regardless of background or status, could achieve greatness through persistence, humility, and courage. And so, the caretaker continued his journey, playing, inspiring, and growing. The piano remained a faithful companion, the music a reflection of his heart, and the lessons learned a guiding light. He had faced challenge, met it with skill and determination, and emerged stronger, respected, and fulfilled. The story of the quiet man who played like a genius became a lasting testament to the transformative power of talent, dedication, and the courage to rise above expectation. In the end, it was not wealth or mockery that defined the moment, but the enduring impact of music, humility, and human perseverance.